1.3 million protest in Hong Kong, organizers say, over Chinese extradition law.
Here's a summary of the article.
More than 1 million protesters took to the streets of Hong Kong Sunday, organizers said, to oppose a controversial extradition bill that would enable China to extradite fugitives from the city, in what would be the largest demonstration since the city's handover to China in 1997. Critics say the bill will leave anyone on Hong Kong soil vulnerable to being grabbed by the Chinese authorities for political reasons or inadvertent business offences and undermine the city's semi-autonomous legal system. The government says the bill is designed to plug loopholes in current law, by allowing Hong Kong to decide on a case-by-case basis whether or not to send fugitives to territories where it doesn't have formal extradition deals, such as Taiwan, Macau and mainland China. Last month, representatives from the European Union met with Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam, during which they expressed concern over the bill. Fears over the bill, and criticism from a broad swath of Hong Kong society, echo 2003 when 500,000 people took to the streets to oppose the passage of an anti-sedition law. Sunday's protest comes days after the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, a pivotal moment that dashed hopes that China would democratize before it took control of Hong Kong in 1997. Hong Kong has commemorated the massacre with a candlelit vigil ever since, the only place on Chinese soil where mass remembrances are held.
This post received a score of 8,728, with an upvote ratio of 97%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
The population of Hong Kong is only like 7.5 million people. So a 1.3 million person protest is over 17% of the population. That's like 51 million people turning out to protest something in the U.S.
Hong Kong's population is about to get a whole lot smaller.
Good for the fire hose industry though, hey. S.
Why isn't this getting bigger news? Higher than this is a few dozen protesting climate change. This is fucking huge. Depends where you are. The BBC, for example, has it on their front page, although it isn't the main headline. However, most people give absolutely zero fucks about Chinese affairs unless it affects us, so it isn't in their top 10 most read.
I watched NBC nightly and they didn't mention it once. It was odd. The Chief Justice of the Supreme People's Court publicly proclaimed the court's role was to obey the party. China's courts must firmly resist the Western idea of constitutional democracy, separation of powers, and judicial independence. People who worked there were kidnapped in Hong Kong by the Chinese government and secretly shipped to China for incarceration. The Chinese wanted to know who from China had bought banned books from the bookstore. The manager of the bookstore was locked up in China for months and was only allowed back to Hong Kong on the promise he would retrieve a customer list from a hard drive in HK and give it to China.
Greater than this was the largest protest since the 1997 Chinese takeover, as a Brit who lived in HK in the 90s. Chris Patton described the handover best. Or did France ask any of its African islands, or the US ask any states their choice? Canada did, but only with the encouragement of the UK. I am quite sure HK would have been in a far better position right now as an overseas territory, with support from the international community in 1997. By now HK could have voted to become independent if she so wished.
Greater than Canada did, but only with the encouragement of the UK. Just so you know, I have literally never heard even the spectre of this argument as to why there were two, not one, in case anyone thought so, referenda over Quebec separatism. It has always seemed apparent to Canadians that it was internal dynamics that forced the hand of the government to allow referenda in 1980 and 1995. The rest of your stuff is fair game, though. Thanks for the video on Patton.
Piggybacking. It is scheduled to be read into law if at all possible on Wednesday 12 June 2019. Third reading passed equals passing into law the next day. Source.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.